Gloria's Gab Live. I am so excited because I have returning after a year's delay or a postponement. No, it isn't a postponement. You were on. So I have Kat and Reed, and we are all going to an event later, which is why we're dressed as we are. Voices for Children. Be a Hero Luncheon. But these guys have this fabulous nonprofit called Comic Kids, and we're going to talk about that. But before, I have to thank South Florida PBS, week after week, our sponsor, and they have an immersive experience coming up, the Da Vinci Genius immersive experience, and it's interactive and it's going to be so much fun, and it's starting pretty soon and running all the way through April. So teachers out there, people that are into art and science, it's got everything, and you're going to love it. So awesome. Let's get started.
Yes.
So since the last time you were on the show, a lot of stuff's happening.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest and brightest and whatever on the horizon for us?
Oh, amazing. So just kind of to recap, so Comic Kids is a Miami-based nonprofit. That's okay. Let's start from the beginning.
Yeah, right.
It's a Miami-based nonprofit, and we teach children how to draw comic, cartoon, and book characters. So we mainly work with elementary age kids that are in at-risk, vulnerable situations. We work with kids that are in children's hospitals, in homeless shelters, suffering from abuse and neglect, foster care, and we provide art programming to them. And so that can be in the form of art classes or virtual classes, and we provide curriculum, all that sort of stuff. And we teach them how to draw characters that they already know and love. Yeah. So that's what the organization does. And we've just really been growing this year as far as our reach and how we're trying to reach more of these kids in these organizations in these places. And for the first time this year, we were able to branch our programming outside of Miami, which is,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah. So that's great.
And doing a really heavy focus on pediatric care. So children in children's hospitals, we've worked with Nicholas Children's for several years now. We teach in-person classes there. And pediatric hospitals, while a lot of people can understand inherently, what it would feel like to be a parent or a caregiver of a very ill child or a child that's in for long stretches of time. What I think a lot of the public might not consider is the fact that when kids are when they're going through treatment, it's a certain amount of time, but they have a lot of downtime in the hospital. And that's a real challenge for little kids. How do you keep them entertained? How do you keep them engaged? So one of the things that we do with Comic Kids is that we go and we teach in-person classes. Nicholas Children's is amazing about this. So every class is really an event. So we come up with whatever the theme of the month is going to be.
You bring a party. Let's face it.
Okay.
Yeah, let's face it.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
And they go big too. When they do a party, they do it in a big fashion. We're kind of big people to begin with.
Yeah, right.
And so when they do Star Wars and May the 4th be with you, it's, Jedi's here and there's toys and there's backdrops. And so, I mean,
really?
they really do it up.
That's so cool.
It's really cool to see what that effect that has on not only the kids, but also their caregivers, because their parents are also under an enormous amount of strain. And so, every time that we go to a children's hospital, we see all of the cars, and all of those cars in the parking lot represent someone who cares about a child who's there, at least one. And so they're under an enormous amount of strain as well. So we try and do programming that is also helpful for them as well. It's not always that easy, but they get bored. Everybody gets bored in those places. And so, all these hospitals are struggling with programming in order to keep up with that demand. And,
we haven't talked about it. We didn't go into the background, but you're the artist, right? So how did explain how this all came about so people understand?
It's a cool story. It's in comics, it's called an origin story, right? Where did this superhero or this villain come from?
What's the
origin story?
I was a reluctant reader. I it's not that I couldn't read, it's just I had no inspiration to do so. And I became, after my parents' divorce, I became a kid in the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and they put a couple of comic books in front of me. And when you've only got a few comic books to read, you read them over and over and over again, and what that does is it reinforces the vocabulary. And something that a lot of people don't really realize about comics and graphic novels is that on average, they have over 50 complex or rare words per 1,000. And even adult novels have less than around 30.
Is that right?
So it's like, it's nerds writing for nerds. And so,
exactly.
So as I started reading more and more and more comic books, my vocabulary became better and better and better. And then I started doing the drawings, and I became a writer, and I started reading, like drawing and writing and all of these different things in a comic book capacity. You go into college, and then that morphs into, I'm a really good writer, so I'm going to go into journalism, and I'm an art historian, and then that becomes my career path. And now I've been an art dealer for 28 years.
Oh, that's what they do for their real jobs.
Yes,
they do have a real job.
We do have other work.
We're not
In fact,
like this all the time.
And they fund. You've been funding this for a long time.
Oh yes,
so
we're self-funded.
by the way,
for a long time.
you could use
Call
some
me.
grants to help expand what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really something that, back to go to the origin story, once we started to see that was what my origin story was, maybe we could convey that to kids. And when we started with the Big Brothers Big Sisters program in 2018, the idea was that those kids would have the same sort of leg up in as far as literacy was concerned, as far as art and creativity, because once you teach someone the skill of creativity, then the sky's the limit for them. And we do limit that an awful lot by cutting off a lot of the art programming. And so we have self-funded ourselves, and we have expanded this programming. We've got a lot of things that are coming up that just require capital. And so, we've been self-funding that, but it's right now we kind of need to turn over the reins to people better at it.
Well, it's because you want to grow, and you've already had so much success that why not replicate it other places and into other areas?
That's what our goal is. Ultimately, with the organization, we have ways for the programming to have a massive reach immediately. Right. So an interesting kind of tidbit. So we started in 2018, as Reed mentioned, just teaching a weekly class of Big Brothers Big Sisters, and it was only comic book characters.
Because I could draw those.
Right. And
because kids, you could draw those.
Right. Yeah. But the kids started demanding, cartoons and different types
Pokemon.
of. Right. And do you draw Pokemon and Super Mario Brothers? So we kind of broadened the spectrum of what we were teaching. So we grew it into cartoon drawing. And then now we have a program, Read and Draw, where we read a book to the kids, and then we teach them how to draw.
Silly voices.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
We read a book to the kids, and then we teach them how to draw in the style of the illustrator. So for example, this week, the class that we taught for a number of different organizations, we taught it over Zoom. We have 150 kids that log in from low-income homes every Wednesday for a free class. They're registered. It's open registration. So we're actively looking for organizations that want to be able to participate in this. But the book that we did this week, and kids think it's so funny, Creepy Pair of Underwear. So we read the book to them. I know, that is a book. It's so cute. And then we taught them how to draw the main character and the underwear that looks like Frankenstein. And then we taught them shadowing and shading techniques. So we analyze the illustrations in all these books, because that's the background that Reed had. We like to connect literature and art, right? It's not really a class that you see often, and so we've had an amazing.
Which is counterintuitive, because it sounds like that is exactly the way that you latch kids.
Yes, that you
something.
can teach them, right?
Absolutely.
So we're really interested in growing that programming. We're interested in working with organizations that focus on literacy. We've got a couple that we work with. Lucy Project is wonderful. They help with dyslexia. They're wonderful. Sure. Uplift Literacy is another one that we work with, and we supply art curriculum to these organizations to be able to pair with their books. So we just have ways, or we're really focusing on growing ways to have a really highly digital platform. So when we started volunteering in 2018, just teaching this weekly class, someone up in Toronto, a friend of ours up in Toronto that's a pediatrician, said she would love to have our classes up in a hospital called Sick Kids that's in Toronto. And at the time, this was pre-pandemic, we were like, oh, well, how would we possibly do that? So we decide, you know what, maybe we should start a nonprofit, right? We have a small business, we can do this. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
As a small business, which is primarily a virtual model as well.
Exactly.
So it's like we already have this chip in our brain that is virtual and it's worldwide. So why not apply it to the nonprofit as well?
Exactly.
So Comic Kids ends up getting its nonprofit status February 2020. We're so excited.
2020.
March 2020.
Are you kidding? Whoa. Oh my God.
But kind of the beautiful thing of starting something at that time, we weren't so embedded in how we were teaching or what the model was. So immediately transitioned to a virtual model. And then that summer, we were honored to be able to at the Low Art Museum and the Beaux-Arts organization, they run a summer camp every summer, an art summer camp out of the museum at University of Miami.
Right.
And we were one of the organizations that they brought in to teach the summer camp that summer. So we stumbled out of the gate during COVID and everybody was kind of learning the virtual model.
Yeah.
But that's when this light bulb went off.
That was a good time to learn it.
It was a great time to learn it.
Forced to use it.
Oh yeah, everybody. Yeah. And now we're all so proficient in it. Like when someone's like, "Oh, let's have a call." I'm like, "Why have a call when we can have a Zoom?" Like, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now we're all really proficient and we kind of live in that sphere. But what we learned at that time, we're like, this is an incredible way to reach a lot of kids. How can we capitalize on that? Exactly. So now, like our Wednesday class, we teach multiple YMCA locations, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and they all log in from their centers after school, and they're on a smart board. Because when people hear, you're teaching, you're teaching 150 kids at a time, that must be crazy. I'm like, that would be crazy if they all had their own screens. Right. It would be chaos. But that's not how it is. So they've got a smart board, and I've got 20 kids in the class, and then another organization has another board logged in, and they're all able to interact with me, show their artworks, all this kind of stuff. So that's a really great way to be able to have broad reach. Like we've got kids in Homestead taking classes up North Miami Beach.
There's a lot of private independent schools that that are not necessarily high end.
Yeah.
That have a lot of kids that are on scholarship.
Yeah.
I can see. And they have smart boards. They all have
smart boards now.
So I can see them having an after school class.
Yeah.
Or
that's our goal.
Club, or
that's our
club.
goal, to be able to really work with that programming. Because I think one of the challenges, at least several years ago, what everybody was thinking was, you have to do everything in person, right? You don't. And if your organization...
And it's a great way to replicate yourself.
Absolutely. Right. Well, it can be anywhere. It can be anywhere at the same time. And so, and the kids, we're able, it's not so cold, right? They're able to interact. They come up to the screen, they'll show their drawings, right? So everybody gets very excited.
Right.
So that's what we see as a solution for kids in Miami-Dade. If there are organizations that are lacking art programming, we can help. Right. Not only in the realm of being able to have them take our virtual classes, but we also provide a weekly art curriculum to a bunch of different organizations. So just to name a few, like Lotus House, Chapman Partnership, YMCA, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, kids that are in foster care. So every week we create in-house coloring and step-by-step drawing pages based on whatever we're teaching that week. And we send it to all these organizations. Wow. Yeah. And then they are able...
Do you have time to do your real job?
Or
is this is the most fun job?
It's the most fun. It's the most fun job.
One of the things that we say around our house is that we believe that every child deserves a quality art education. Yes. Mm-hmm. And this is our way of fostering, the idea that if we can do it, then you can as well. Yeah. And once kids believe in the possibilities and are exposed to the possibilities of their own creativity, then that is really what germinates, and they can grow. Because you can teach a kid math, you can teach a kid science, English, all of these different subjects, but if they don't have the skill of creativity, then how are they actually supposed to take those skills and expand them to actually build a life for themselves? So that's actually what the arts do.
Sure. And in many ways, I think kids can get kind of pigeonholed into a certain kind of package almost, right?
Exactly.
Where it's this focus on this, but there's a lot of creative geniuses out there that are creative genius little kids, but they just don't necessarily have the exposure. And so we're trying to take away the barriers of location-specific programming,
Right.
take away the barriers of cost. On our website, we put all of our pages up for free. We're starting to get people from Australia contacting us. You just go
Really?
on the website, you download the pages. You're guaranteed to get them for free, and that way for schools, for teachers, for Title I schools, so we've got comic and cartoon drawings, and then we also have book characters that we do, and so that's great for
like
teachers.
a nonprofit or a school goes, they have to like register or whatever to get all your stuff.
No, they contact us. We can have our contact information there, comickidsorg@gmail.com. Contact us. We'll put you on our list. And so every week you're going to get art curriculum that you can count on, right? So it's going to be coloring, step-by-step drawing pages, and additional art resources. So maybe we'll put the movie trailer in the email, or we'll just give you additional information so that it's the best. So
you have to send it to me. I have to check this
Do you
out.
want to be on our list?
Oh, yeah, I definitely want to be on your list.
All right. Last week we did cute monsters, so I'll send you those.
That was adorable. Great class.
This week we focused on book characters, and then in November we're going to do a really big push on gratitude and have a bunch of gratitude activities based on comic and cartoon characters that are art curriculum.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're super excited about that happened this summer and when we branched into Atlanta was we started working with the Ryan Seacrest Foundation. They create studio spaces in pediatric hospitals. It's called Seacrest Studios. Reed actually knows a lot about it. But we were able to start working with them this summer, and it's an incredible program. I don't know if you
They have actually 14 different studios in children's hospitals around the United States: Dallas, New York, Boston, Nashville, Salt Lake City. I mean, and all of these, what they have is they have in-house programming, because again, a lot of these kids can't necessarily leave their room for classes or for entertainment, so they're bored. They sit in their room and they're bored, and so what they do is they beam these classes. Right now at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, we're talking to entertaining 600 rooms of children. And so all of these kids can sit there, and we have a few kids in the studio with us, and we're chatting with them and having a good time. And then the other kids can do all of these, because all of the sheets are printed out and they have colored pencils and things like that. And so they can follow along in their rooms. And I think that that's a replicable program that can go to all of the children's healthcare, and we can ostensibly teach the class from here, beam it up there via regular like a Zoom, and then it can be doled out to a lot of different Seacrest studios. So they're doing really a lot of heavy lifting with regard to making certain that these kids have as many resources as possible to keep them entertained.
And how wonderful that they're able to take advantage of what you're offering.
Oh, yeah. So we're going to be
exciting.
It's really cool. So we did our first in-person class in the studio this summer in Atlanta, and there's cameras everywhere. And so the class is filmed and kind of above, and then they can watch, drawing at the same time. Kids are there, so it's interactive. But what Seacrest Studios is doing is they're bringing in a bunch of different, organizations that are helping. I know that they filmed even animals at the zoo. They bring in entertainers, really famous people. So the kids all over these hospitals are able to have this really cool programming. And so we did our first classes there this summer, and now we're going to be teaching from Miami, and they're going to be logging us into their New York hospitals, and they're going to be logging us into their Atlanta.
Are they going to help you produce them?
We're going to be, so we teach the classes to them, and then we're in talks with them about how we can expand this programming and impact more kids.
That's great.
And also, another thing we do is we do Spanish programming as well. So that's something that we're interested in growing.
It's a whole nother.
Se habla español.
Como no.
Como no. So we teach, a lot of times at Nicholas Children's, they've got a lot of patients and families that are from Central America, South America, the Caribe.
That's
so
great.
So it's an important part of where we want to be growing. So that was very exciting for us to be able to have more impact. And what they do with our pages is these hospitals print out our pages, and then volunteers deliver them to the rooms, and volunteers will either help the kids draw, or they can go pick them up in other places. So that's
the little grab bags. They just grab the bag and
colored
go.
pencils and stuff. So
funny thing is, at the Da Vinci immersive experience, one of the interactive things is they give you a couple of paintings and a bunch of colored pencils, and there are places to sit down, and people sit down, and they're asked to draw the Mona Lisa or draw, whatever, and the color and color in, and so you have to use the colored pencils and whatever.
Fabulous.
And then you sign them and you leave them. I don't know what they're going to do with them.
I have a feeling like our son would absolutely love an activity like that.
You would, you've got to take them.
But that's great because then you're able to, first of all, immersive art exhibits are incredible, right? It's such a different way to experience art. Before, I think a lot of people would get intimidated by museums, right? And we hear it even among our friends when, we discuss in our other job, when we discuss art, a lot of people get intimidated by it because they don't feel necessarily comfortable with it or educated enough.
And people will admit that because when they come to our house, that they're like, look, I don't know a lot about art. When I ran galleries, that's what I heard a lot. I don't know anything about art. It's more like, what you like.
Yeah,
and you don't need to know what's in the water to know that you're thirsty. So it's like there's something that is within you that you see something and you go, that's something that I really like. That's something that I would want to wake up to in the morning and see on my wall and in my environment. But when people come to our house, they're generally like, don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything.
Don't touch anything.
Well, yeah, don't touch the art. But what is so cool about immersive and why it's so nice is that it's approachable for people. So it takes away, when you walk into a museum and you just see a painting hanging there and you don't understand the context or the history behind it. And, a lot of people can't necessarily understand it that well, but everybody can understand being immersed in art. That's not something that you need to know anything about. And it's great that they have art activities. If you're drawing the Mona Lisa or coloring, that might not be something, a lot of adults don't do this anymore. They don't
play.
They don't play.
I love to play.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes, you do, ma'am.
So do you.
A little, right?
But it also binds you to the artist. Like if you're going to draw something like that, you're really studying the artwork. You're studying the lines, how the lines are done. Yeah. And so the next time that you see it, you're going to be like, you're a little bit more bound to that piece. And so I think that's a really cool thing about doing these type of immersive experiences as well. And you're just exposing new people. You bring a kid to a museum and they may just look at the walls and not be so excited about it, but then you bring them to an immersive experience. They're like, wow, this is amazing. And it opens up new lines of connection to the arts with an audience that may or may not be sort of arts oriented. And again, it falls back to that skill of creativity. Once you inspire that one kid to be creative, then the sky's the limit. So
and I think I told you that, and to your point about learning from comic books, when my kids were little, I got them comic books because I knew that was a way to introduce them to reading. And you're right, and there used to be a place where you could subscribe, and every week a new group of comics would come in.
And they're so excited.
I used to have G.I. Joe and X-Men delivered to my house. And X-Men is an interesting...
I had girls. I didn't have that.
Oh, I understand. You could have the Archie comics.
No, I had the Archie. No, it was definitely Archie.
There was a mutant called Dazzler at one point.
There was. She was very...
But one of the great things about even X-Men, Wolverine is one of my favorite characters in all of comic books, and Emma Frost is one of the great villains. But there's representation in 1975.
By the way, she's Emma Frost.
Emma Frost, yes.
Yeah, I don't know where the superhero. Do we have to eliminate you or something? Is that
Please don't.
What's the deal with that?
Please don't eliminate me.
But I'm a superhero.
I know. Oh, I'm not. I'm the villain. I was a villain last year for the Voices for Children. Because I was Poison Ivy. She's kind of a villain.
Oh, I didn't know what that was. I don't know all your crazy characters.
I think I'm sensing a theme out of your costume.
I know. I take the dark side always.
I kind of pick dark anti-heroes as well, though.
But
Wolverine and Batman.
Wolverine. It's beautiful because a lot of these comic characters, their origin stories they're coming from tough spots too. Right. So they're coming from foster care, for example, Shazam, right?
Spider-Man, he lost his Uncle Ben.
Right.
And they lost his parents, so he lives with his Aunt May. And so a lot of these have really tough origin stories.
Yeah. And
Superman's entire planet blew up.
What's that?
Superman and Supergirl's entire planet blew up.
I know.
So-
Yeah.
It's a tough start.
Talk
That's a
about
tough start.
tough.
That's
Yeah.
a tough start.
Yeah.
You're picking up from scratch.
Yeah. So
But
there's
think
great
of all the people
messaging.
that have lost their homes recently.
No,
Yeah,
I know.
And that's
absolutely.
so they
Right,
relate.
exactly.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
having to start over again.
Yeah.
But it's interesting when you mentioned comic books and obviously that was Reed's kind of foray into getting interested in reading. And he had said some of the statistics on there being more advanced words per 1,000 in comic books.
Right.
A lot of times that's not looked at, or graphic novels, which are similar. They're panels of illustrations and the writing is limited, right? So you don't have as many words. But when you think about it with comic books, you have to be very selective on the words that you're using. So they have to be effective, right? And they're
Exactly.
more advanced.
Exactly.
And so Scholastic is a partner of ours, and they're absolutely
they're
wonderful.
great.
They're
Yeah.
so great.
Oh,
Then
yeah.
they have a very big philanthropic arm, and what they're interested in doing is ending book deserts in these impoverished areas
yeah.
because so many children, number one, a huge percentage of the population, something like 20%, are dyslexic. So that's an enormous amount of kids. So right there, you're starting with struggling readers that fall behind in school.
Right.
And then there's also when you've got low income homes, or in Miami, for example, when you don't have English speaking parents necessarily at home. So this is very tough for kids if they don't have books in the home, if they don't have anybody that's able to read with them, or if they're struggling readers. There are multitudinous studies that have been done on what happens when kids aren't reading by third grade. So Scholastic, incredible organization. A lot of people don't realize how much they're doing for the community, how much they're donating to kids.
Right.
So we pair their books with our classes. So Dog Man is one of their characters coming out with a movie this year. And Scholastic did something so cool this year when the new Scarlet Shutter book came out.
Yeah.
We were able to get it the day that it was released. And we taught a class for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we couldn't look at the book or anything like that until the day came out. Reed reads the book to the kids and all
In
these
very
different
silly voices.
Oh, really? Oh, my
so
gosh.
good.
You're fun.
And then we taught them how to draw the character.
Oh, guess what?
What?
We ran over as usual.
What do you mean?
We're out of time.
We're out of time?
There's a zero there. That means there was no more time left.
Oh, shucks.
So anyway, but thank you guys so much for coming.
Oh, yay. Thank you for having us.
We're on to a luncheon to entertain.
Yes. So this
And
can continue.
support.
This can continue,
Yeah,
this
exactly.
conversation.
So thank you all for joining us today. And until next time,